Welcome, everyone. This is the meeting of the Sentencing Guidelines Commission. Today is March 12th, 2026. I will ask Director Wright to take attendance.
Roll call. Castro. Commissioner Castro. Okay. Commissioner Castro absent. Commissioner Eid.
Present.
Commissioner Eid present. Commissioner Fraze.
Present.
Commissioner Fraze present. Commissioner Keefe.
Present.
Commissioner Keefe present. Commissioner Ladd.
Here.
Commissioner Ladd present. Commissioner Mazzaros.
Here.
Commissioner Mazzaros present. Commissioner Middlebrook.
Present.
Commissioner Middlebrook present. Commissioner Moore.
Present.
Commissioner Moore present. Commissioner Moran.
Present.
Commissioner Moran present. Commissioner Mueller.
Present.
Commissioner Mueller present. Commissioner Reeves.
Present.
Commissioner Reeves present. Commissioner Saxena.
Present.
Saxena present. Chair Mitchell.
Here.
Chair Mitchell present. Madam Chair, there are 12 members present, 1 member absent.
And with that, we do have a quorum. You can just check here. Forgot to download the agenda. Pulling it up. All right. Next item on the agenda is approval of draft meeting minutes from February 12th, 2026. That's why I needed to see the agenda because I can't remember the date of the last meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Commissioner Reeves makes a motion. Seconds. Any discussion on the minutes?
Sorry, so is this the agenda or the minutes? Today's.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed the agenda. This was the minutes.
Okay.
Can we do that out of
Sure,
order?
sure. Okay,
We'll do
so,
the minutes first.
and who made the motion to approve the?
Commissioner Reeves made a motion and Commissioner Middlebrook second.
Thank you. To the Reeves motion to approve the minutes from February 12th, 2026. Castro. Castro absent.
Yes.
Yes. Fraze.
Yes.
Yes. Keith.
Yes.
Yes. Ladd.
Yes.
Ladd, yes. Mazzaros. Mazzaros.
Yes.
Mazzaros, yes. Middlebrook.
Yes.
Middlebrook, yes. Moore.
Yes.
Moore, yes. Moran.
Yes.
Moran, yes. Mueller.
Yes.
Mueller, yes. Reeves.
Yes.
Reeves, yes. Saxena.
Yes.
Saxena, yes. Chair Mitchell.
Yes.
Chair Mitchell, yes. And I'm sure there are 12 votes in favor, no votes opposed.
With that, the motion is approved unanimously. Now we need to actually approve the agenda for today. So I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Eid, is it Eid?
Eid.
Eid, thank you. Commissioner Eid makes that motion. Commissioner Ladd seconds. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take the roll.
Do the Eid motion to adopt today's meeting agenda. Castro. Castro absent. Eid.
Yes.
Eid, yes. Fraze.
Yes.
Fraze, yes. Keith.
Yes.
Keith, yes. Ladd.
Yes.
Ladd, yes. Mazzaros.
Yes.
Mazzaros, yes. Middlebrook.
Yes.
Middlebrook, yes. Moore.
Yes.
Moore, yes. Moran.
Yes.
Moran, yes. Mueller.
Yes.
Mueller, yes. Reeves.
Yes.
Reeves, yes. Saxena.
Yes.
Saxena, yes. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mitchell, yes. Madam Chair, there are 12 votes in favor, no votes opposed.
Great, and with that, the motion is approved unanimously. Okay, so next item on the agenda is election of a vice chair. So with departure of Commissioner Larkin, we have an opening in that position. This is a position that the commission actually establishes itself. Under law, we're allowed to set in the offices that we need, and it's possible that I won't be here someday. So I definitely need someone to run the meeting when I'm not here. In addition, the vice chair assists in developing agendas and sometimes looking at the materials and giving some direction helping to give some direction to staff as to what those materials would be that would be most helpful to move our discussion forward. Those are sort of the general requirements of a vice chair. I think right now we have a commission that's working really well together, and I'm really proud of that. Happy to have anybody sitting. I don't usually put a suggestion out there, but I do want to this time, and I will also open it up for others. I'd like to put one suggestion out there because there is a member of our commission who has been the longest serving, who has a lot of seniority, a lot of experience. Member for those reasons, because this person has been here so many happen and often has the historical views, and is a pretty. I would like to first open up nominations by asking Commissioner Middlebrook if she would be interested in being vice chair, being nominated at least.
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Okay, so Commissioner Middlebrook is one nomination. What other nominations do we have from the floor? Or are there any other nominations? You can also nominate yourself. Happy to.
Madam Chair, can I just make a procedural point? So unlike most elections, this election will be held by roll call. And that's because this meeting is being conducted under the Minnesota law that permits meetings to be conducted by interactive technology, and those rules under that law do require all votes to be made by roll call. So it's not going to be your secret ballot type of election. Just so we're all, no surprises at the end.
Unless there's no other nominations, in which case we have also done acclamation.
Well, that is true.
So,
That's true.
but are there any other nominations from the floor? Happy to have more. Well, then, how do you do acclamation?
Yeah, usually just call for nominations 3 times and then announce that the nominations are closed, then declare that the sole nominee has been elected by acclamation.
Okay, so I've done 2 calls, I think. Are there one more call, and are there any other nominations?
Madam Chair, if it's
Yes.
appropriate, I would move the nominations closed and that Commissioner Middlebrook be appointed vice chair. Acclamation.
I would,
Second.
Commissioner Moore moves what he just said, Commissioner Ede seconds. To, if the motion is to move that we do it by acclamation, do we have to vote, or?
Well, that motion could also be, if there are no objections, then you can declare that motion to be adopted by acclamation and then declare the candidate to be elected by acclamation. So-
Okay, I think I'm gonna do it. My God, it's like there's so many rules.
That's really gonna work.
This is why he's here.
Maybe.
I'm going to, unless there's any objection, I'm gonna accept that motion. And unless there's any objection, I will declare the nominations closed and announce by acclamation that Commissioner Middlebrook is our vice chair. All right, well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think it is well deserved, honestly. You've been here
Thank you.
for quite a long time. And probably should be in the seat that I'm in because of that. All right, next item is a comprehensive review ranking project revisited. It's, and I think staff is leading that. We have the folks here that are ready to go for that.
Yes, Madam Chair, it's mostly
Okay.
going to be me.
Okay.
So I just want to say, if there's any goodwill that you have toward me, I'm going to expend it now in the next few minutes because at the conclusion of this is that you're going to get a homework assignment, and we're going to give you insufficient time to complete your homework. I guarantee it, and so we'll get to that momentarily. But this is we're going to start with just kind of a general discussion about rankings in general and sort of what goes into the commission's thinking historically and thinking and how the process works. So So last year, the commission looked at several offense groups to see whether the offenses in each group were appropriately ranked as part of the comprehensive review. And it makes sense. There's the big two things about the sentencing guidelines are the two axes on the grid. There's a bunch of other stuff as well, of course, but those are the two big things. And the vertical axis on the grid is the severity of offenses. So it's important to from time to time review to see if the offenses are appropriately ranked. And so the commission did that with several offense groups last year. And as a result of that, there's a number of offenses that are being ranked either up or down. In one case, modifier is being removed and it's being ranked for the first time. And those are going to the legislature. So this is really a continuation of that, sort of the tail end of the comprehensive review this year, looking at some additional offense groups. And the offense group that's going to be presented today involves offenses resulting in death. Recall that last year we looked at criminal vehicular homicide, so that's not going to be looked at this year, but other offenses resulting in death will be looked at this year. And we just wanted to talk about, before we do that, just an orientation to offense ranking, including discussing the ranking criteria that the commission typically uses for assigning a severity level to an offense, and discussing what options you have for ranking offenses. So typically the two big things that the commission's looked at historically have been the harm and the culpability. It's a pretty simple way of saying that. So, as an example, let's take criminal vehicular homicide, since that's already been discussed, but that has harm, all the way, the needle's all the way to the right on that, right? The harm is death, so it can't get any more serious than that. But criminal vehicular homicide is not ranked at severity level 11, it's ranked at severity level 8. And the reason for that is that the culpability is not all the way to the max. The culpability is the same culpability that, say, somebody committing a misdemeanor DWI has. And that's why it's ranked at severity level 8. Although if somebody has repeated DWIs, has a serious history of prior DWIs, maybe the culpability goes up a notch, and thus the commission decided to rank that offense at severity level 9. So one severity level higher. So inching up to that maximum severity level of 11 there. And then another thing that the commission considers besides just the harm and culpability is statutory maximums, because that's typically the legislative signal on how serious they consider it to be. Now, having said that, the legislature doesn't always take a holistic and comprehensive view of all statutory maximums every time they create an offense, unless it's some kind of a larger coding project. The statutory maximums are created when the offense is created and may not necessarily line up with other statutory maximums of similar severity. The two really important concepts here about ranking are that the focus of the ranking is on the typical offense. And we're going to be talking quite a bit about what is the typical offense and how that's sometimes a challenge. And then offenses are listed within each severity level as peers. They're deemed to be equally serious. So generally, all severity level 8 offenses are deemed to be equally serious. A reference that we didn't really, probably should have given more attention to last year when we were doing these is Guidelines Section 5A. We have not reproduced Guidelines Section 5A for you, but that is something that you may want to refer to as you're going through these ranking exercises, because it's got these offenses, and I've got a page of it on the screen here, but it's got, and it's the first page, so it starts off with severity level 11, the most serious offenses. And you can see there's only 4 offenses ranked at severity level 11. Those 4 offenses are deemed to be generally equally serious. Likewise, the 6 offenses that are ranked at severity level 10 are generally deemed to be equally serious. So this offense can help you as you make offense severity rankings to sort of say, well, is it more serious or less serious than the ones ranked at 9? How about the ones at 10? Is it somewhere in the middle? Where does it belong? And it gives you an ability to relatively rank these. This is a relative ranking project. We don't have any offenses that are subject to a mandatory life sentence. Those are excluded from the sentencing guidelines. So We're starting off at severity level 11, second degree intentional murder. There are no first degree murder offenses on the grids because first degree murder is mandatory life. There is a separate grid for attempted first degree murder. We're not getting into that. These are offenses that really resulted in death as opposed to attempts. But we could look at that if the commission's interested. It's not really a severity level ranking in itself. It's its own separate grid for attempts, for attempted first degree murder. Some offenses are unranked, and that's important to understand. And those are offenses that are rarely prosecuted, or if the offense covers a wide range of underlying conduct. Remember, we talked about we're ranking the typical offense. And if the offense covers a wide range of underlying conduct, it's really hard to say what the typical offense is. And the third reason is the offense is new and the severity of a typical offense cannot yet be determined. So maybe the legislature creates a new crime, thinking of a crime of child torture that the legislature created a few years ago. The commission did rank that, but a reasonable commission member might have looked at that offense and said, well, I don't know what a typical child torture case is going to look like, so I don't really know how to rank that. And it's sort of throwing up your hands at this time, but sort of with the implicit promise that the commission will come back around and look at this. And that is something that the commission has to consciously do. It's not something that will just automatically happen, but this is it is something that the commission can look at all the unranked offenses. We have annual unranked offense reports and see whether some of those are candidates for ranking now. So the normal severity level ranking options are, pretty simple. Keep it at the current severity level, up rank it to a higher severity level, down rank it to a lower severity level, or unrank the offense. The commission, in theory, could also adjust the grid. They could create a new severity level or combine existing severity levels. Or there could be a legislative recommendation, for example, to distinguish levels of misconduct. Now, I want to talk about that for just a moment. So there might be different levels of misconduct that the legislature has not statutorily enumerated. And typically the commission really, really likes it when different levels of conduct are statutorily enumerated. By that, I mean, like there's a paragraph A for death and a paragraph B for great bodily harm, and that kind of thing. And it makes it easy to point to, okay, this is what we're ranking at this level, and this is what we're ranking at that level. However, the commission has not always done that. A couple of examples are, kidnapping used to be an example of this, but then the legislature enumerated it, I think, for the benefit of the commission in part, so that, and the benefit of practitioners, so you know where it is. But there was a kidnapping involving, where the victim was not released in a safe place, and then there was kidnapping where the victim was under 16, and there was a kidnapping where the victim suffered great bodily harm. And the commission did not rank those three things the same, even though they were all clustered in the same paragraph. With the same statutory maximum, but the commission said, well, we're going to rank this one higher than that one, and so made it distinction. Another example is in theft. For example, theft of over 35,000, theft of a firearm. Those are both in the same paragraph. They're not statutorily enumerated, but they could be distinguished. They are distinguished in the guidelines. The theft of 35,000 is separately ranked from theft of firearm. And just sort of a little spoiler here, why am I talking about this? Because you're going to find some offenses in your package where the harm, remember we talked about harm and culpability are the two big things. The harm is death or great bodily harm. And it's like, well, what's a typical offense if the harm can be death or it can be great bodily harm? Those are immensely different things. One of them, the victim's walking away, never going to be the same again, but the victim's walking away or limping away or something, leaving anyway. And whereas in the death case, the victim's dead. So just something to think about there is, it could be a legislative recommendation to distinguish levels of misconduct, or it could just be a different ranking, maybe with a legislative recommendation to distinguish levels of misconduct. And then I want to just kind of talk about the grid. You do have to keep in mind what the grid is, and keep in mind when you're marching from, 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 to 11, those are not like uniform squares on a sidewalk, and you're just moving down. The gaps between the severity levels definitely get bigger, especially as you get into larger numbers. So we're going to illustrate this by flopping the grid down on the ground, and then having each of those presumptive sentences marked by a bar here. So you can see when you and keep in mind, just the last four are above the dispositional line. So those numbers below that are presumptive shaded at severity level, at criminal history scores of 0. At least those are presumptive stays. But just looking at those last four bars, you can see the difference there as you climb up the grid. Gets quite extreme as you're moving from severity level 8 to there's big gaps between 8, 9, 10, and 11. And it may be that as you're going through this exercise, you think there's a room for an 8.5 or a 9.5 or a 10.5. I don't know, but just throwing that out there. So that's the general discussion. Now we're going to move on, unless there's any questions about sort of general philosophy, we move on to the actual packet. Start off with the bad news. We would like you to have this to us by noon on Monday, March 23rd. So that's giving you 2 weekends, but it's not giving you 2 weeks. It's giving you about a week and a half to get this done. 2 weekends. So, and it's just really just a function of the fact that we need to get just sort of internal process that the vice chair is going to be probably pretty intimately familiar with here soon, but the process is 2 weeks before the commission meeting, we try to get a draft agenda, and we don't always succeed, try to get the meeting materials to the chair for her review. And then, of course, 1 week before the meeting, we get the final agendas approved by the chair and any finalized meeting materials to you, the committee, and posted on the public. So we have to have some time to do that. So it's a lot of data. What we're asking for here is a lot of data on the packet, and so it takes staff some time to process the data. And I'll be whining a little bit more later about some of the stuff the legislature's been throwing at us this session, and we don't have a lot of extra staff time. So we'd appreciate it if you could abide by that. We understand if it's not possible, but.
Looks like Commissioner Ladd has a question.
Before you jump into this, the one question I had, do we have a magic number for those unranked offenses? Like how many cases do we need, or like how many cases do we need before we're going to take a look at? I mean, is there some, I know the trauma, so we're going to look at it, but is there some benchmark that we use to say when we hit the threshold of X, that's when we're going to sit down and take a look at it because we feel like we have data, or do we, it's just, I guess that's my question.
I mean, there's no automatic determiner of that. I will say staff looked at some of the unranked offenses a few years ago, and we explored the possibility that what was it? It was counterfeiting.
Yeah.
Counterfeiting. Like there were probably enough counterfeiting cases that it was where we could probably rank it. And I think the commission ended up ranking most forms of counterfeiting. There was one form of counterfeiting that didn't have a number value assigned to it that I think the commission might have left unranked, if I recall correctly. But that's an example of where that might come up. I mean, the big one really, as far as we got plenty of data, I would say, but just maybe not really. The commission's never been quite willing to jump out there and try to rank it, or maybe even ranking isn't quite how it should be handled. Is aiding an offender accomplice after the fact, and that's
Well, I guess the reason I asked that question, just because I do think there are some that we, Commissioner Middlebrooke and I were speaking about that earlier this week about looking at those, and I know Commissioner Castro brought that up, I think, at the last meeting and asked that question. But as I look at I know you're gonna get into this, but like I look at adulteration, and it's like, how many cases are there of those? And it's like, there aren't any. but yet we haven't ranked. And so I'm just curious if we have some benchmark at which we say, this trip's a wire for us to take a look at it, whether it's unranked or something. And I just didn't know what that was because again, we've got a case on here that is ranked that we don't have any cases. So I just didn't know like when we're gonna put the tripwire in.
I mean, so those criteria that I said for unranked offenses, that's written in the guidelines comment. So that's official commission policy. So the commission is making an implicit promise that if it doesn't rank an offense, a new offense, because, hey, we want to see how this plays out and see what a typical offense looks like, collect some data, and then we'll be able to rank it. There is an implicit promise there for the commission to come back and look at that. Having said that, there's no process in the way the commission operates. There's no automatic process by which that happens.
Okay.
That's something that, either staff has to initiate or a commission member has to initiate in order for us to do that ranking. I mean, and there are different approaches to that. You could have a subcommittee sort of comb the list of unranked offenses and see which should be brought to the commission's attention, kind of thing. That would be one approach, Madam Chair. You could have staff do the same thing as well. But it's not quite as automatic as it sounds in the comment.
Thank you.
It sounds like we could do some work to sort of figure out a process there. Because I think you're right. Like, I think it should be brought to the commission's attention every so often, even if it's to say, here they are, not looking like anything's rising to the top unless somebody, right? Or here they are, it's looking like it might be time to take a look at this. That's a great suggestion.
In terms of, on the slide you had, an assigning severity level rate is slide 2. Talk about the things that the commission has historically used to base its decision for assigning rankings. The second one is culpability. Does the commission generally, historically, has the commission just look to the statutory text and the mental state that's required for the commission of the crime to determine culpability and blameworthiness, or is there another measure of culpability or blameworthiness that the commission has looked at in terms of evaluating that factor?
I mean, I think it's somewhat subjective. I don't have a firm answer for you on that. I mean, you could have statutory elements that maybe don't necessarily correspond with how the offense typically plays out. And since the commission is ranking how the offense typically plays out, there might be a variation from that, from just looking at the black letter of the statute in terms of, can you, I don't know if you can always divine culpability from the black letter of the statute, given that you also have to look at the typical offense.
Yeah, the only reason why I asked, it seems like the other two factors in that column are more directly related to the statutory text, like the level of harm is going to be in the statute generally, and then the maximum punishment would be. So I just was wondering, that seems a little more nebulous if it's not linked solely to mental state.
It's also, I would say it's also, sometimes it is also in the statute or not in the statute. Like we just rewrite assaults 9 or assaults, what's first degree assault, sorry, right? First degree assault down, we moved the ranking of that. As we were discussing that, we were talking about the fact that had this been intentional assault resulting in great bodily harm versus assault that happens to result in great bodily harm, we would see it differently. But the way the statute was written didn't include intent, great bodily harm. So, like in that way, we do think about it.
I mean, an example might be drive-by shooting at an occupied, at a person or an occupied vehicle or dwelling. That's, the state of mind there is recklessness, which isn't intent. It's not the world's worst state of mind. It's severe, but it's not, severity level 11 severe. And it's ranked higher than other, reckless ways of causing death. But I think I'm guessing that probably what the commission was thinking when they ranked that is that that behavior is just so extreme, you know, you're recklessly shooting at a person or an occupied vehicle or dwelling, you know, that just it's, you know, sort of unstated in the text is obviously there's an extreme likelihood that somebody's gonna die as a result of this. And so essentially the state of mind that's imputed to that, I mean, by evidence of the severity level 11 ranking, that's basically the commission's equated that with intent. Like that's close enough to intent for us, just based on how that plays out, even though the actual statutory state of mind is just recklessness. So I think there's a little bit of sort of looking at sort of the real world facts of the situation and saying, yeah, that's a really bad behavior and that deserves a severity level 11. I'm not meaning to prejudge any of the rankings when I say that. I'm just talking about historical rankings. You know, that's probably why it comes in at 11, whereas typical felony murder is a 10.
So like risk of harm would fall into culpability then, kind of under that example, right? Because that's not like the level of harm that resulted, it's just still just a drive-by shooting, but the risk is so much greater because of the conduct.
Yeah, I think that all factors into culpability. Okay, so, let's see. Okay. I'm going to share with you the packet. And the packets are designed, there's basically all the offense page, well, we'll get to the offense pages. There's 2 chapters in this packet. I'm going to jump into them. If I can so chapter 1 are offenses where the defendant's state of mind, at least how I viewed it, the chapter 1 offenses are offenses where the defendant's state of mind in causing the death is an actual element of the crime. And chapter 2 offenses are essentially that the defendant committed some kind of criminal misconduct and that someone died as a result of that misconduct. There's no state of mind with respect to the death required for any of those chapter 2 offenses. There may be a state of mind that's required for the underlying misconduct, but not for the death itself. So we start off here with the general rankings. We see how these are ranked. Some are ranked at severity level 11, 10, 9, quite a few at 9, several at 8. And then we have a couple of outliers at 5, and there's one at 2. And then we have one unranked offense of assaulting a police horse, resulting in the death of the officer, presumably the officer riding the horse, but it doesn't say that. And so we'll get to all of these. So there's some definitions here, and then we get a description of the states of mind. And generally there's 3 states of mind or 3 kind of categories. So there's intent, where the defendant intended to cause the death. And that's in the second degree intentional murder. Obviously it's in premeditated first degree murder and some other first degree murders. Most other first degree murders involve intent. But we're not talking about first degree murder because it's a life sentence. Some of those, by the way, are life without the possibility of release, and some possibility of release after 30 years. And then we have reckless or negligent killings. So there's third degree we call that depraved mind murder. It has the phrase depraved mind in the statute. It requires committing an eminently dangerous act, highly likely to cause death, while indifferent as to the loss of life that this eminently dangerous activity could cause. Which does sound kind of like drive-by shooting now that I say it, but it's not ranked there. And it doesn't require that act be a felony itself. It's just whatever the act is. It could be a legal act, just goofing around with a chainsaw or something. But based on how you do it, it could evidence the depraved mind necessary for third degree murder. Then you have second degree culpable negligence, which has sort of this objective element and a subjective element. So it's the objective element is the gross deviation from the standard of care that a reasonable person would observe in the same situation. That's kind of, that's gross negligence, which is, by the way, the same standard for criminal vehicular homicide. And this is ranked the same as criminal vehicular homicide, but it does have an additional element. That's a subjective element, which I guess, well, it's causing the death by consciously disregarding the risk of death, death or great bodily harm that the behavior would cause. So there's a kind of a conscious disregard there. And then there's no general crime of negligent homicide in Minnesota. Typically, negligence is a civil standard, so you can sue somebody if they caused harm to you negligently, where they fail to behave as a reasonably prudent person would under the circumstances. I put in here that there are two forms of second-degree manslaughter involving an element of ordinary negligence. One involving hunting accidents where you thought it was a deer, but it turned out to be your buddy. And then the other has to do with failing to secure dangerous animals. I will say, I'm going to backtrack a little bit on this. After I wrote up this paper, I found out that there is a misdemeanor crime of failing to secure dangerous animals that has the negligence in it. So really, the failing to secure dangerous animals probably should be in Chapter 2, because it really is that you committed this misdemeanor crime of failing to secure your dog. And then somebody died as a result of it. And then you have these two. These are really different. These are two forms of first-degree manslaughter that occur when a defendant intentionally kills. So you've got the maximum intent there, but then there are these mitigating circumstances that reduce culpability. The first one is that when the crime's committed in a heat of passion provoked by unusual circumstances that would provoke a reasonable person under the same circumstances. So the subjective and the objective elements there. And then when the crime was coerced by a threat of imminent death. So both, if either of those exist, then it reduces the basically second-degree murder down to, or I guess first-degree murder down to first-degree manslaughter. So with that, let's dive in to Chapter 1 offenses. So the Chapter 1 offenses kind of have the same spread. You see the severity level of 2 severity level 11s, 1 severity level 10. Then you got the heat of passion 9. And then you got manslaughter 2, culpable negligence, which is again ranked the same as criminal vehicular homicide. And maybe the fact that the defendant is intoxicated supplies the subjective element for that makes it equal to manslaughter in the second degree. And then manslaughter in the second degree, these are a big jump down here to 5, negligent hunting. Notice all these offenses are above the dispositional line. They're all severity level 8 or above, which means even a first offender, even you've never been in trouble with the law before, you commit one of these crimes, you're going to prison as far as the guidelines are concerned for some period of time. Not so with these two though. Negligent hunting and negligent animal control are severity level 5. So for each offense, we show you a little snippet of the grid. We show you the neighboring cells. In this case, there is no higher neighboring cell, so we just show you the 2 grid cells below that. We show you the statistics. So there's 37.5 sentences per year, a pretty whopping 769 prison beds we estimate are taken up by that. So that's not a DOC count of prison beds. That's a prison bed count by taking all the sentences that are pronounced, that are executed, and assuming that everybody's going to serve 2/3 of those. So it's a mathematical calculation based on sentences. It's not an actual prison bed count, but that's what we call an estimated prison bed. So that's 769 beds. So that's a big number. That's a significant percentage of it's not quite 10% of the DOC population, but it's approaching that. And then we have some statistics about it. We show 100% obviously presumptive prison. We'll see that a lot. Very, very few dispositional departures here. And And then we show you whether there's a mitigated duration. There are some mitigated durations here. There are also some aggravated durations. They're kind of almost balanced in this offense. That's unusual. We don't see that many aggravated durations for the most part. And then we show here, I'm not gonna do this with every offense. I'm just kind of showing you how the worksheet's laid out.
Can I ask you, what is GTZ?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for that. That's in the glossary. So it stands for guidelines true zero. And we say GTZ so you don't get mixed up with anything else because, we say true zero and that might mean different things to different people. But basically that's somebody who not only has a criminal history score of 0, but they have a clean worksheet. Basically, there's nothing on the worksheet that would indicate this person's ever been in trouble with the law. That's not to say we've run a criminal history on the person and we know that they've never been in trouble with the law. But as far as the worksheet's concerned, it appears that there are no qualifying offenses on the worksheet that might have contributed to a partial point, for example. There's no like low-level felony or there's no misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor that might have contributed to a criminal history score. So that's what that means. And typically we'll see higher departure rates at guidelines true zeros, but here we saw no departures. All right, so then we have the breakdown here by cases and by beds of these different demographic categories. So cases and beds are, the difference between those is beds reflect the magnitude of the sentence. So if say a particular ethnic group is getting particularly long sentences for this crime, you'll see that reflected on this graph by the fact that their bed color will be bigger than their cases color, for example. But in this case, actually, it looks like by race and ethnicity, it looks like they all line up pretty well. Same thing with geography down there. And then you do see some variation by criminal history score, which I guess is understandable. So the people with the lower criminal history scores, like there's guidelines true zeros. So 0 is guidelines true 0 plus 0, if that makes sense, right? So the other zeros are kind of you got a 0, but it's just technical. So, but it does make sense that those people would take up a smaller percentage of beds. Perhaps they got the low end of the box, perhaps they got the mitigated departures that were reflected up there. And it goes on. So that's how to read these charts. And I'm not going to go through this like in every page, but I just want to make you aware of how to read these. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it will be difficult if you print it off in black and white to read it. And then I didn't put anything here on re-ranking considerations for this offense. I mean, this is essentially the offense for which severity level 11 was built. So if you don't like how it's ranked, you'd almost have to change severity level 11 because this is the archetypical severity level 11 case. And so here's the sheet on the back.
Commissioner Eid has a question.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Sorry, I was just looking at the sheet for each offense, and I was wondering, is there a notation somewhere whether there's been a recent legislative change to the statutory text, like the statutory maximum or like the type of harm? Or should we be looking up the statute for each offense and then looking to see if the revisers changed it? And I guess part of the reason for my question is that I'm wondering, is this whole exercise part, and I know I'm new to the commission, so I'm sorry if this is a silly question, but is this just a periodic review that is done of different groups of offenses every period, or is it being prompted because there have been recent legislative changes in this area, or are we just trying to compare it to current demographics? Like that's why the statistics are at this on the bottom.
So just for the whole exercise, it's when we were doing the comprehensive review, we had identified multiple groups of offenses that we felt needed to be looked at because they haven't been looked at in a long time. So this is one of those groups. But then I'm going to turn to Phone a Friends to say, why did we pick this group? Like, what was the reason that this group was brought to the top as one of the things that we felt the commission?
My understanding is that was a decision made by.
E4.
Was this
Mr.
steering
Ladd,
committee?
was this one that you put on the table originally?
I don't know,
Or
this,
was this one that you put on the table originally?
I don't recall, I think
This was one that you proposed.
I proposed it
At the steering committee.
at the steering committee. How did we get from the steering committee to today's agenda?
Oh, that's not what I'm asking. I'm
Oh.
asking, why was it put in front of the steering committee? Like, why is it a group that we were originally considering?
I think the logic at the time, if I may, was that these are the most serious offenses, and so it's worthwhile to consider where these are ranked in proportion to all other offenses that will be re-ranked. And that was the logic at that time, but that doesn't move them from
Commissioner Middlebrook?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the steering committee, what I recall is we were looking at, we were trying to group different offense, have these different offense groups. And so last year we hit the ones that were kind of at the top of the list. But this was another one, and I mean, I think our goal was to probably look at all of the offenses on the standard grid, but we did them in these groups because it made sense that they were somewhat related. And so here we are at this, we got through the I think it was 3 groups last year. So we've got this group and another one coming.
Commissioner Lett?
I would echo that, and I would say, as somebody who went down a very dark rabbit hole, when we started looking at this, it was really difficult to sort of not look at one and look at 3 other ones and say, why is this one ranked the same one as, you start kind of doing this. And so to try to get some control, I think in that steering group, we tried to make some buckets so that we could knock this off, because it was a really large task. And we were running out of time, we were running out of money, but it was a really important task and we needed to sort of compartmentalize. And so I think this just was a category that we felt like we couldn't get to in that first sort of process. And we were trying to put them into groups or subgroups, I guess, to look at the standard grid as a whole. And I think that was at least my perspective of the rationale behind that.
That's also my recollection. And then the other piece that I would add to it is that we were starting to see some potential incongruity in terms of the level of harm for these offenses compared to the level of harm for other offenses that might be ranked at similar severity levels. So it, the level of harm might have felt incongruent sometimes, but it made us have, want to think about what are all the other elements that we think about in ranking and how did it end up there? If, this is death versus there's some great bodily harm that's higher, why is this one here compared to there, or vice versa? But those other things that we think about are what comes into play. And so this gives us an opportunity to really just hone in on this concept. So that's what I recall us talking about. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Moore?
Well, I wasn't on the steering committee, but I would be curious to know, what percentage of prison beds are part of this category right here? I would assume it's a very high percentage of it. And it just seems to me that it makes good sense for us to be looking at what's the driver of that to make sure that it makes sense and that our sentencing guidelines are where they need to be.
Very true. Commissioner Eden?
Yeah, that's super helpful. I just was wondering, and it seems like to me now, listening to all that I don't really, doing these exercises, I don't need to worry about whether or not there's any legislative change to the language at all. It doesn't really matter. It's just looking at what the stat max is as it's presented here, what the language is as it's presented here, and then considering all the different data that's also presented. Is that right? I guess I was just wondering if part of it is that we need to think if the stat max has changed, if we need to rethink it, or the language of the statute changed.
And I will say that our process, so like you'll get to experience this very soon, but as the legislature wraps up its work every year, there's always something that they do to the code. And so those changes do get flagged by our staff and we review them before the next set of guidelines comes out and determine if that changes where we think the offense should land. So every offense has at least had that kind of reviews. It's likely that if there was a statutory change recently, that we may have moved it already. If we felt that was sufficient, like something strong enough need the offense to be moved. So that's probably okay, but we're looking at it then in a vacuum. We're not looking at it in relation to all the other offenses that are similar. So what this gives, the advantage that this exercise gives us is to really think about proportionality among the whole group. You know, and layer on, that's why he gave you the other offenses that are listed at each one. You know, you could also be thinking about, like, first of all, does it seem to make sense the way the group is laid out? And then if I now look at this offense compared to other things that are there, does it make sense that way too? So.
Thank you.
But having said that, there was an interesting change that the commission did consider, but I think I will bring up in a couple of offenses here. So thank you for bringing that up, but most of these haven't had significant changes recently. Labor trafficking would definitely be an exception to that, and then I'll talk about felony murder. Okay, so now we're on the backside of the ranking worksheet for 1.1, which is murder in the second degree, and you've got sort of your basic offense of options of do not rank, up rank, down rank. You know, and with even an option here for if you want a 9.5, you can opt for a new intermediate severity level between 9 and 10, or if you think you should merge severity levels. There's quite a few options on here. These are all I'm using Adobe Acrobat, and I think this should work with Acrobat Reader, which is free. You know, where you can actually check the boxes here, and you can type in and so forth, and then you should be able to save the document and send it in. If you prefer, you can print it off and handwrite it, but this is form fillable, and then just put whatever notes or other thing. And then there's an other box if you want to think of it. So, you know, if you wanted to, you know, make a distinction between death and great bodily harm, for example, you can put that on the other. So that's.
And isn't there, like other is also the place where, or the notes. Oh no, you have the legislative recommendation. I just wanted to call out that, like, we also have a role to make a legislative recommendation if we think so, if we think we should, and we actually did send some forward this last year. So if really the issue that you're concerned about is something that needs a legislative change, and then we could react to that change, then make sure that you fill that out too.
And you can check multiple boxes,
Yep.
you know, to the extent it's not illogical. I don't think you can up rank and down rank, but so that's the back of the sheet. So now let's see if we can move a little quicker. Well, this is kind of an interesting one: adulteration resulting in death. So the problem that I have with this is, is really in the statutory design of the offense. So if you know, basically, you know, if I poison your goblet and with the intent to kill you, knowing it's poison, and you drink it and die, yeah, it makes sense that would be ranked at 11, right? Because that's basically an intentional murder, and that's included in the statute. The knowledge that it's poison, you know, it's deadly, and the intent to kill. That's one of the knowledges and one of the intents that you can have. But it also has the knowledge of so if you look, you can either know or have reason to know the substance is poisonous. But it doesn't have to be poisonous. It can also cause bodily harm or illness. And if any of those is involved and death results, then it's currently ranked at a severity level 11. So the example I give here is you've got a prankster who, you know, mind if I pick on you, Matt? Matt knew I was going to pick on him. Matt just seems of my staff the most like a prankster. So Matt puts X-Lax in my brownies, thinking it's, you know, going to cause bodily harm to me or illness or pain. You know, he thinks it's going to cause a stomach ache, but lo and behold, something wrong happens, and you know, maybe it's me, maybe it's something about the substance that he put in that he didn't know about. But you know, he met all the elements, and then I die, right? So he's met all the elements of the crime, but it seems quite a bit different and quite a bit less than severity level 11. So I'll just leave it there that you can chew on that at your leisure. 1.3 is murder depraved mind. It's by the way, no, you don't really see the adulteration happening in in practice. 1.2, depraved mind, I didn't put any considerations about that. I do have a description of, another description about the legal state of mind. 1.3 is manslaughter, heat of passion. So this is again the mitigated intent. So the intentionally causing the death, so it should be a severity level 11 or maybe even life without release, but it was provoked by heat of passion. We see this also somewhat infrequently. So this mitigates it down to severity level 9. So the commission implicitly considers this mitigating circumstance to be worth a 2 severity level reduction from severity level 11. At least, you know, it's a greater than that reduction if it was premeditated. But it probably wouldn't be premeditated in the heat of passion situation. Because, so I guess we'll leave it at a 2 severity level 11, a 2 severity level reduction. Then you have manslaughter 1 coercion. So that's the other mitigated, not very frequently, and it kind of makes sense that it's not very frequent. It seems like kind of a TV show plot, you know, that somebody has to kill somebody because that person is being coerced by threats that cause the actor reasonably to believe, so it has to be reasonable, that's objective, reasonably to believe that the murder that has to be the only means of preventing either the death of the murderer or somebody else. And so that doesn't happen very often. The commission considers this to be worth a 3 severity level reduction, so 1 more than the heat of passion reduction. And again, these are both manslaughter in the first degree, so you can see that the commission doesn't necessarily stand or fall on how the legislature has classified this, what the statutory maximum is, because both of these are ranked the same, or both of these are categorized as manslaughter in the first degree, but the commission puts them at different levels. And then we have manslaughter in the second degree, culpable negligence. So this is I describe this in more detail where there's the objective and basically I go into detail here on the difference between culpable negligence and gross negligence, and how there's this objective standard, which is the gross negligence, but also this subjective recklessness in the form of an actual conscious disregard of the risk that you're taking. Then moving down the severity level ranking, we come to the negligent hunting, which is shooting somebody because you negligently believe the other to be a deer or other animal. Which, I mean, probably most cases, right? You should definitely know whether you're shooting at a deer or human. So I can't imagine a case where that wouldn't be negligent. If you accidentally shoot somebody. Negligence is simply means the failure to use that degree of care which an ordinarily prudent person or careful person would use under the same circumstances. You would think that a reasonable hunter would make sure that the target is not a human. So that's really much lower at a severity level 5, as is the other negligent one, animal control, negligent animal control. And again, this maybe should have been in the other chapter because there is a misdemeanor crime of basically negligently or intentionally permitting any animal known by you to have vicious propensities or to have caused greater substantial bodily harm in the past to run uncontrolled off the owner's premises, or negligently keeping it properly confined. And these terms are defined, the great bodily harm and substantial bodily harm. So that's the end of chapter 1. And then,
Can I ask a question?
yes, sir.
Yes.
What is the conventional wisdom on the weight to be given 0 sentences per year, 0 estimated prison beds for the preceding 9 years? Like, does that indicate that this should be a high priority, or like how should that data be considered in doing this, or is that up to us to decide how it should be considered?
I mean, it's up to you, other than to say that it certainly would, if you were interested in making it unranked, if you were interested in unranking it, that would put the thumb on the scale there to make it unranked, I would say. But other than that, yeah, or if you just really have a hard time figuring out what the typical offense would be, and you don't have any example cases to base it on, that I guess would also do it. But
Can we access example cases as we're doing this, or are you gonna get to that, like,
we don't have
for any of these?
actual example cases for you.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess if that's something you need, maybe we could do that. I don't know how we do that as a research project. And that's a good question, because that is something you're supposed to consider as you're ranking these, is what's a typical case, but we never provide you data, like a story time, on what's a typical case. And it really eludes data. It really would have to be stories. And I think that's kind of where you can talk to each other and say, well, I've dealt with these kind of cases, and this is what really happens,
Yeah, I think that's what we have to work with.
So here we have the predicate misconduct, and the formula is the same. You get the predicate misconduct and then death resulted, right? So it's the same formula. So simplistically, you could think, well, then these will be easy to rank. We'll just take the underlying misconduct and rank those in severity, and then the death resulted. But it might not be that simple. When I talk about this, say the offense 2.3 is second degree murder by assault contrary to protective order. So there's no crime of assault contrary to protective order, which maybe there should be. That'd be interesting. But there's the crime of assault, misdemeanor, and violation of protective order, misdemeanor. So you're like, oh, it's a couple of misdemeanors. It's just like, letting your dog loose, which is also a misdemeanor. So this should be ranked really, really low. But the commission ranks it at quite high. It's severity level 10. And as the legislature is classified as a second degree murder. So maybe, my theory that I put in the paper here is, that this involved a violation, and maybe it's kind of like drive-by shooting. You're reading into it a little. This defendant knew he had the protective order, and he knew he was violating it when he assaulted her. It's kind of like we put these guardrails, the legal system put these guardrails in place around this victim to protect her life, and the defendant did exactly the opposite by breaking through the guardrails and assaulting her, and then exactly what we were afraid would happen happened. She was killed. So because of those things and sort of the justice system's involvement, maybe it does make sense to rank these misdemeanor predicate offenses as high as a severity level 10. So that's kind of my introduction to that, which isn't really that helpful. And then we got the part about exceptional ranking challenges. And these I've already talked about a couple of times. So these are like the death or great bodily harm. Trying to rank the typical offense. How the heck do you do that if the statutes provide for death or great bodily harm? I don't know what to do. I would say some options are you could break them up. You could say, okay, we'll rank the death this way and the great bodily harm this way, even though the legislature hasn't enumerated that. Or you could ask the legislature to enumerate it, which, they did eventually with kidnapping. They did separately enumerate them. Or you could do both. You could go ahead and rank them separately and say, hey, legislature cleaning up after us and separately enumerating. But like I said, even though that is definitely the commission's bias, they like to rank things only as the legislature has enumerated them. They haven't always done that. I've already given you some examples of, theft of a firearm versus over 35,000. Those aren't enumerated separately, and the kidnapping used to be, and I could come up with some more examples if you like. So these are the severity levels here. Again, we're starting at, we got one severity level 11 here, drive-by shooting, and then we got felony murder. So that's just one offense, but it's a lot of different predicate offenses. We'll talk about felony murder, and then also the assault in violation of a protective order. So those are kind of the outliers. And then you run into a lot of severity level 9 offenses where the predicate offense involves first degree or high controlled substance crimes, highly scheduled controlled substance crimes, child abuse, violent misdemeanor assault, Aggravated first-degree witness tampering, criminal abuse involving a vulnerable adult, labor trafficking resulting in death. That is a new offense, newly ranked by the commission. And then, and there was some discussion about whether that should go higher, at the time it was ranked. Manslaughter in the first degree involving lower scheduled drugs, child neglect, manslaughter, riot in the first degree, and swatting resulting in death, where police were called on somebody knowing it was a prank. And then we have severity level 5 manslaughter involving a spring gun or trap or snare. And then duty to render aid is ranked all the way down to 2. And then, as we said, assaulting a police source is unranked. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, except for a couple of exceptions. So murder in the second degree, drive-by shooting, we talked about that already. It is pretty highly ranked. It's probably one of the highest ranked predicate offenses that we're going to see here, ranked at severity level 8 just by itself. It's the only severity level 11 offense without an intent to kill element. But as I said, with adulteration, there are some alternative intents. Then we have murder in the second degree, felony murder. And this is one, so basically you cause the death of somebody while you're committing or attempting to commit a felony offense. The felony must involve some special danger to human life. That's not in the statute, but that's a case interpretation. It has to involve a special danger to human life, both inherently and in the manner it was committed. I will say there is a change in this in recent years involving accomplices. So basically, the general rule of accomplices is the accomplice is as guilty as the principal, and the accomplice is equally liable for punishment as the principal. But the exception here for felony murder is that a death that's actually caused by another person. So let's say you're the getaway driver, the death is caused by somebody who went in and robbed the liquor store. A death caused by another person, you're not liable for it unless the person, the getaway driver, was a major participant in the underlying felony and acted with extreme indifference to human life. So really, there are like some extra elements for accomplices that don't apply to the principal, the trigger. And that's not included on the sheet. I apologize for that omission. That's found in 609.05, and that is a new change.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Castro raised the question about this last time because he's the guy in Ramsey that's getting all the resentencing.
Right.
So he has, I think, pretty familiar knowledge with it under the resentencing of these aiding and abetting. There's like a window where people are filing. And if I understood his concern, it's that now there's a higher level of culpability to be sentenced or to be convicted of an aiding and abetting second degree unintentional murder because you have to either be a major participant or have acted. No, you have to both. And acted with extreme indifference to human life.
Right.
Yeah, you have to both. So, I mean, do the guidelines treat aiding and abetting separately in terms of, yeah, right, so they're not, right? So,
Right.
and that's a pretty significant legislative change. And I'm just wondering, like, that this might be an example of it's hard to tell because it's such a new law what the effect on cases and beds are going to be. But maybe it's too early to really even consider that, and maybe this should be considered separately. I mean, at least the aiding and abetting. I'm not saying not the second degree altogether, but I just wanted to raise it because he made that point. It occurred to me there's some merit to that this is narrowed for the aiding and abetting who can be convicted if the law is being applied correctly. And that goes to that culpability element that you were saying we should consider.
The culpability for the principal is not changed.
Right.
So the elements are the same for the principal. So currently as with every other offense, the accomplice is given the same punishment as the principal. So you'd almost have to kind of follow through with that. If you're not changing the ranking for the principal, because the offense hasn't changed, what are you gonna do? Increase the ranking for the accomplice? So the accomplice would be more liable than the principal? That seems unlikely. I don't know, it's, and, you know, I think there are some cases where an accomplice is more liable than a principal, like the hitman case, you know, it's probable that the person who hired the hitman is more liable for the murder than the hitman, but that's not a distinction we currently make. And certainly the hitman example, the hitman would be, the customer, I guess, the person who hires the hitman would be completely liable for the crime. I mean, actually, that wouldn't be a felony murder, so never mind, but,
One question, isn't aiding and abetting, I mean, when you charge it that way for the accomplice, isn't that a modifier? Is it a modifier?
Yes, it is.
It's a modifier. So then what does the aiding and abetting modifier do to the offense? Due to the potential sin? Or is it based on the underlying?
It's based on the underlying offense in the charging document through the court system electronically. If you don't hit that modifier, it does something on the court side of things related to sentencing that triggers stuff. So you click a box related to that so that it shows it as a sentencing modifier.
it's not a guidelines modifier. It doesn't modify
No.
the sentence.
No, no.
It just modifies how
But
the
some do,
crime
that's
is
why I
treated.
was asking.
Yeah, attempts do. And
Attempts, yes.
Yeah.
and that's something we're not
It does.
exploring here, right? I mean, it's also, it's possible that you can say, well, attempts should be more than, but I mean, that's beyond the scope of what we're doing. We're just looking at the main offense, but, yeah, I mean, this can happen. And I think burglary or robbery is probably the main example of this, because you can have like a team of people doing a robbery and, you know, nobody knew that Abel was carrying a gun. And then when Abel shot the person behind the counter, you know, everybody else is surprised. So I think that's kind of what they're getting at is, well, they all had lesser culpability. In fact, they have now a defense to the felony murder. They're of course liable for the felony, the underlying felony, but they're not liable for the felony murder under the new law.
Commissioner Middleton.
Thank you, Manager. I think too with this, with the aiding and abetting felony murder on the, for the accomplice, the new law, it seems that the legislature is equating that the new requirements to get to the culpability of the actual person that caused the death. I mean, it seems like it seemed, you know, that was kind of the whole reason that task force looked at all that, because there were like these, like the driver of the car, who that was their, you know, under the old law, they were just as liable as the person that went in and shot the, like,
Store
in the-
clerk.
yeah. So when they looked at that, they realized the culpability for those were so much less, which is why I think putting in the major participant and, you know, those two qualifications, that is the culpability that equates to the principal. I mean, that's kind of what it seemed like came out of that task force and then the way they drafted that statute.
So maybe as we think about it, the commission should be focused on primary individual, how we rank this, or how we rank this offense. And that's your question, is like, should we be thinking differently?
Yeah, exactly. And this is very helpful because it doesn't, I think you made a great point. I don't think we should necessarily need to worry about it. If that's the intent, and that makes sense. I think I understand it that way too. But I just remembered Commissioner Castro raising the issue, so thank you.
Yeah.
I think it'd be more of a problem if the guidelines reduced the penalty for an accomplice. You know, because this sort of puts back enough culpability on the accomplice's shoulders that maybe the accomplice is now equally culpable as the principal. But I don't know that it causes the accomplice to be more culpable than the principal, which I think would be the problem. Okay, murder, second degree assault, contrary to order for protection, we talked about. I just want to get a little bit into assaults here. So assault, contrary to OFP, is ranked at severity level 10. Assault, manslaughter in the first degree, which is assault resulting in death. Okay, that's why it's in chapter 2. Or it could be another violent misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor that's with such force or violence that death or great bodily harm is reasonable foreseeable. But really, the easy way to get to this is just you committed assault and death results. So this is a severity level 9 offense. So you saw that the assault that we just went by, the OFP is violated as a severity level 10 offense. So that kind of makes sense in the ranking situation. But in practice, Minnesota law allows a prosecutor to charge out an assault, potentially as felony murder. If I suppose you have to prove that, somewhere after the assault. So this should, these could be just one punch assaults where somebody falls down and maybe they break their skull. So that's third degree assault right there. And then they die. So that's felony murder because the third degree assault is a felony. And so on your way to dying, you suffered great bodily harm or substantial bodily harm or dangerous weapon was used. So that's how you get the felony out of the assault. Converted from a severity level 9 offense here to a severity level 10 offense as the felony murder. So that's currently the way that works. Feel free to call me if you have any questions about that. I know I'm going through this pretty quickly. All right, then we have labor trafficking resulting in death, also ranked at severity level 9. Again, severity level 9 is kind of the mode for most of these cases, although there's quite a few severity level 8s. This was most recently ranked out of all these offenses. Murder in the third degree, this is Schedule 1 or 2 controlled substance sale. So these, would probably be felonies for the underlying misconduct. And then you have criminal abuse of a vulnerable adult resulting in death, also severity level 9. That's a gross misdemeanor for the underlying misconduct. Child abuse, also a gross misdemeanor, also ranked at severity level 9. Also manslaughter in the first degree, aggravated witness tampering in the first degree. So this is another one. This is I would say the most problematic offense in terms of harm, because there's 4 types of harm that can be involved in this offense, and it's ranked at severity level 9. So the harms are death, great bodily harm, a threat of death, and a threat of great bodily harm. That's a huge range, and it's really interesting because if death does result, and somebody's doing this in the course of dissuading a witness, I'm not even sure severity level 9 is high enough. But if death doesn't result, severity level 9 seems pretty high. Maybe it's right for great bodily harm, but certainly if it's just a threat, severity level 9 seems pretty high, at least to me.
But the harm's not just the level of harm that's threatened, right? It's the harm to the judicial system too.
Sure.
Which is probably why it got that high ranking. And then
And these are the types of considerations that you should be thinking about as you're looking through, because those types of justifications can equally support a ranking.
Is there a notation on here of when things were last ranked? Like where because I noticed you said that about something previously.
The labor trafficking is a new offense, so it was just recently ranked. Actually, that probably skewed the data, didn't it? Because I don't know if we should have put that there because it wouldn't have that much data because it's not that new. That's
Really close to the end of it.
Yes, ma'am. So let's see. Now we're down to the 8s. The lower schedule drug offenses, child neglect or endangerment. I think it'd be useful for you to look at all these: riot in the first degree, and then swatting resulting in death or great bodily harm. So a false police, bringing in the SWAT team on another residence falsely. Manslaughter, second degree spring gun.
We have a question from Commissioner Saxena.
Yes.
Hi there. Sorry, it took me a second to get off mute. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Ken, yep.
Okay, all right, thank you. Hey, I just, I know that I raised some of these questions last time around that we did the severity level ranking, and I've been very interested to listen to the discussion. I think what continues to strike me about like trying to determine the severity of these offenses is that, at least to me, for every one of them, it's almost like the harm that results is secondary to the harm that's intended. And I think that the harm that's intended is maybe synonymous with culpability. And so like to me, as I'm listening to a lot of the offenses, like you kind of scrolled back by the drug related offenses, and you talked about the adulteration offense, and all of those are offenses where I think if the person intended to cause a death and failed to do so, I would think that that kind of an offense should be ranked higher than an offense where the person, for example, accidentally caused a death and never intended to do so, and it was not their intended outcome. So I just wanted to flag that in case anyone can provide any clarity on how to reconcile those two concepts of like the harm that actually results versus the harm that's intended. And then the other thing that I've kind of felt like is, at least I'm not following completely, is how to factor in public safety and deterrence, right? Because if somebody doesn't intend a particular result, if somebody doesn't intend to cause a death, for example, or is engaged in recklessness or something closer, we talked a lot about gross negligence last time around. To me, I struggle with those being punished really severely, because I don't think that punishing someone for engaging in gross negligence, something that they didn't intend, is likely to increase public safety. It's not likely to deter somebody with that state of mind in the future, because it's like not an intentional state of mind, and it may not create any general deterrence for others. So I just wanted to flag that. I've been sitting on those thoughts, and I don't know if now's the right time to raise them, but I wanted to flag that, like, as I go through this, those are the things that I'm going to be thinking about.
I think it's really helpful to verbalize those, Commissioner Sextina, and so I appreciate you bringing those up today, and I also think we should bring them up next time. So like they're relevant in both spaces for, if you have a thought that you think that we should be thinking about, or you're grappling with a thought, I think it's useful for other commissioner members to also be thinking about those as they set about this exercise. And then we kind of all have to come to some sort of shared agreement when we get to the ranking. So it's relevant in both places.
All right, if I may continue, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So manslaughter is second degree spring gun. This is a very odd offense. It's interesting to me that it's ranked equally with the two negligent manslaughters, because this isn't really negligence. It's somebody who commits a crime. It's a 6-month gross misdemeanor, and it's setting a spring gun, and then lo and behold, somebody dies, which seems almost like the natural consequence of setting a spring gun. So it seems a little different to me than a hunting accident, but I'll be the judge of that. And then finally, we have duty to render aid, which is ranked at severity level 2, which may seem awfully low to you, but check out the statutory maximum, because we do try to kind of make these offenses fit on the grid somewhat, and it's it's a 2-year statutory maximum. If it were ranked any higher than that, or much higher than that, it would be, the grid would be conflicting with the offense pretty quickly. So that concludes my presentation on this agenda item, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Sextina, did you have your hand up for another question?
I'm sorry, I just forgot to put it down.
That's no problem, no problem. All right. Okay, so you all have your homework, and I am realizing that I picked a bad time to go on vacation.
Well, it's a good thing you have a nice vice chair.
Well, no, I mean, I'm gonna,
I'm not doing her
So-
exercise.
it's during the ranking
Oh, I see.
assignment that I'll be on vacation, so I have to decide whether to take this with or not. Okay, that's it for that one. We are sort of reaching the end, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. The next item is committee updates. I'll give the first one. The committee that's looking at the Hernandezing issue met today and just started kicking off discussions. Really, we were trying to understand how the Hernandezing rule currently works. Maybe what some of the reasons are that it exists, and then we're really trying to identify some data that we thought would be helpful for us to look at, to get our arms around really like how is this happening, where is it happening, when is it happening, what sorts of disparities might be resulting. So those are all things that we'll continue to look at future meetings, but obviously no big decisions made today. We're still in the exploring stages. Did you have an update on the vision?
Yeah, so my plan, if the legislature permits, is to send out the sort of the first run at the change guidelines to the revision, the restructuring committee, kind of doing it a little bit asynchronously so that everybody has a chance, plenty of time to read it over before we actually meet in person, and then we can discuss, what direction that the committee wants to go.
All right. And then that takes us to item 6, which is Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I begin, I'd ask if anybody who's online has any attendees online, if you'd like to make a comment during the public comment time, which is about to come up, please raise your hand. It looks like you're all on computer, so you should be able to press the button that says raise your hand, or the little hand icon, and I'll know to unmute you at that time. So, Madam Chair, we so far this legislative session have had 48 fiscal notes assigned to our agency. This is already well ahead of the normal total for an even numbered non-budget year, and is already approaching the highest total for an even numbered year in at least a decade. If we just get a few more, we'll break that record. So these have diverted a great deal of your staff's time from commission work. Most of these have come from the House. I'm not picking on the House, I'm just pointing that out. It's still too early to tell whether any significant criminal law legislation will be enacted. In the House Public Safety Committee, which is evenly divided by party, a number of significant crime bills have failed to gain the support of the opposite party and have therefore not passed committee. In the Senate Judiciary Committee, the first major hearing for criminal and/or firearms-related bills will be tomorrow, when at last count 18 bills will be at that hearing, and I assume that'll take most of the day. We're now about 4.5 months out from when the Commission's proposed changes are going to take effect on August 1st. From the perspective of the Commission's proposals and recommendations, there's good news and bad news, and it's the same news. The good news is that there's been no legislative action so far to block the Commission's proposals. The bad news is that there's been no legislative action so far to enact the Commission's recommendations. If the Commission's proposals do take effect August 1st, there will need to be some significant changes to the electronic worksheet system, or EWS. EWS is the system that probation officers across the state use to prepare the sentencing worksheets that judges use to apply the sentencing guidelines to an individual case. It is one of several correction-related applications that are housed on the Department of Corrections portal. This portal is maintained and updated by information technology staff at DOC. So your staff is now working with DOC's IT staff to get the proposed changes ready by August 1st to be prepared in the event the legislature does not block the proposed changes within the next 2 months. DOC's IT staff has a number of other projects due, but we are confident that they understand the importance of getting these changes ready by August 1st. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions about for Nate on those things? Then let's go ahead and move on to public comments.
And members, you do have a public comment from, I think she spoke at the last commission hearing, if I recall correctly, but you do have a written public comment from one member of the public in your meeting packets. I do not see that any members of the public online have raised their hands. I don't see any members of the public in the room today.
And then that closes that item. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. The next meeting of the commission is going to be April 9th. Once again, we will start later. We're going to have the Hernandezing subcommittee meet earlier. I think we'll have time for that, to structure it that way, given what we have. So we'll work that way, and I don't think there's anything else. So unless there's any objection, I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
You got
See y'all next
to 4:30 still.
What?
You got done at 4:30 still.
Yeah.
You got done at 4:30.
1 minute.
Oh, I got it done on time.